Reuben, do you want to
Great.
take the lead?
Sure. Hang on. All right. Yeah, let's get it started. So yeah, welcome everyone to our little cozy Twitter Spaces. This is what do we call this? Privacy Roundtable, and it's kind of like a joint little thing with Pivx, Firo, Basic Swap, and Particl, where we do this, I guess, like once a month or so, and we obviously, invite basically anybody that's into privacy. We ramble and talk a lot about other things, but today we'll be talking about alternative to centralized exchanges in the crypto space, especially, when we are privacy preserving assets. And all of us, I think, have faced challenges when it comes to, well, I don't like the way Carp pronounces it as CEXs. I still prefer sexes.
Okay,
But
we'll
anyway,
go with sexes. You've set precedent now. Sexes.
sexes. But
We're
yeah,
going to
so
clean up the space and move away from sex.
so yeah, because we had the Binance delisting, we had OKX, again Monero being removed. A lot of people celebrating this. We've talked about that a bit in our previous space, but today we also have two guests, the Beam CTO. Vlad, right? Yep. And also Joel. So he's also known as Desert Links. He lives almost entirely on crypto, or entirely, and I'm not quite sure. I think almost entirely, at least definitely. So he would, I am really appreciating his insights, on how to live basically on crypto only, and what his takes are on DEX implementations, because he's been a big user of Maya swap and Tor swap. How that how you're going to deal with like fiat alternatives. That's also going to be really interesting. And basic swap is also a DEX. So I think let's go ahead and just have a quick introduction. I think to be polite, let's start with our guest. So Beam CTO, go ahead and tell us who you are and the Beam project as well. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. So my name is Alex. I'm CTO of Beam, which is a layer one privacy coin that was launched back in 2019, a really long time ago. Recently celebrated our 5 years, second halving, end of treasury emission. A lot of things happened this January, which was like 5 years of Beam being launched. Beam is using Mimble, Wimble, and Delantus protocols, the combination of both. It has smart contracts, so you can run all kinds of decentralized applications with privacy. Mined on GPUs, proof of work, for those who are not familiar, capped emission with periodic halving. The total amount of coins will be like 262 million and something. What else do I want to say? So we've been working on this for a long time, developing the privacy ecosystem that's just kind of trying to encompass as many aspects of privacy as possible, starting with, obviously transfer of value, so you can send transactions privately. All transactions on Beam are private by default, as they should be. But also kind of trying to expand into decentralized applications, DEXs, NFTs, all with added layer of privacy. So that's kind of was our mission for the last couple of years. That's the intro.
All right, thank you very much. And yeah, I've been following Beam for a very long time. Really awesome work that you guys are doing. And we also, I guess we also cover like, the Binance delisting that they also face, and their new, atomic swap decks and other stuff. So we'll cover that later, but they are definitely a very relevant guest, having experienced the challenges of centralized exchanges. So yeah, Joel, would you like to introduce yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Joel, and I've been involved in crypto for quite some time. I'm currently doing biz dev and marketing for Dash. I've been involved in many crypto projects over the space, especially with the privacy focus. I did some work for Zcash last year, and yeah, I've been using crypto as my main money since 2015, the end of 2015, so coming up on 9 years. And as a result, it's really piqued my interest in all kinds of decentralized things and kind of aspects of the ecosystem, because every time there's like a delisting or a service gets shut down or something like that, I feel it directly, because then all of a sudden a pathway gets closed and I have to do a different service or try something else. And also, a few of my crypto using friends, more than one, I should say, right, don't have access to the means by which to KYC at all. Like, they don't have the documentation necessary for various reasons, and so they're kind of this sort of life I live as a luxury, as a LARP sort of. They kind of have to do that because they have no alternatives, and so that kind of makes me very interested in the ways we can expand not only privacy but also decentralized exchange infrastructure and so on.
Sure, thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think Joe is one of the very few people who I know that is like living where their mouth is. No, I think that came off wrong. But what I meant was, like, people talk about, oh, crypto's alive, and he's the one living it. All of us are like dirty fiat people, So yeah, kudos to him. So let's have Yenachar from Pivx, and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm Yenachar. I represent Pivx. Pivx is a long-standing private cryptocurrency. It's a masternode cryptocurrency like Dash that Joel mentioned, but it's proof of stake. That's a distinguishing quality, and which gives it a number of benefits and a rich community, and that's Pivx. It's unlike Beam. It's alternative. It can be private or it can be transparent. It's in that family of cryptocurrencies. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Okay, let's have the infamous Dr. Cap, who is, I think, wearing two hats as usual, representing both basic swap DEX and Particl. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
My name's Dr. Cap. Dr. Cap Lammersinger, full name. I am an advisor to the Particl project, which are basically the teams responsible for the Particl marketplace and basic swap DEX. So it's a privacy-focused ecosystem. Basic swap DEX is, I would say, possibly the world's safest, most secure and private DEX. Certainly the only or the first DEX in the world to have bidirectional Monero atomic swap support on a fully distributed decentralized order book. And the Particl marketplace is a fully decentralized KYC-free eBay-style marketplace platform where anyone can be a buyer and a seller of goods online, and I mean real goods and services, not just sort of NFTs and the like. So that's us, as it were, in a nutshell.
Cool. All right. So, like, I guess we can, get into the meat of the discussion. Obviously, perhaps I think the first question I would ask, I'm just going to be like the host this time and let you guys do the talking.
Reuben,
yep.
Reuben, I was wondering, could we? I had a couple questions for our guests based on their intro, just follow-up questions. Would that be okay?
Go ahead.
Same here, by the way. I have loads of questions.
So if we could just like Alex with Beam, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the smart contract feature that you have. I know private smart contracts are a really big deal, and it's it's a challenging area. And I was wondering if you could tell, I assume that your smart contracts are not Turing complete. They're probably more like stacks on Bitcoin, if you're familiar with that. But I was wondering if you could maybe talk just a little bit more about that and what your smart contracts can do and how that's going.
Yes, gladly. So actually, our smart contracts are Turing complete, but they are. It's an interesting story because they're not private in the sense that when you send a transaction to a smart contract, you can see the values that are stored in the smart contract, right? You don't see who sent the transaction, or like that. You don't have any identity information, but the values, once they get in the smart contract, they are visible. It's kind of the opposite of the secret network. Like the secret network, they have they're based on Cosmos, which is a non-private layer one.
Yes.
But once the value gets inside the smart contract, it is completely kind of private because it's running inside the Intel SGX. But in
Right,
our
but
case,
they have to use that like internal private mechanism on the
yes.
CPU, right, to do that.
Yes, they're using the Intel security extensions,
Right.
which is relying on Intel technology. We did have initially the idea of making non-Turing complete smart contracts. We call them scriptless scripts, or like we use this term, but eventually we kind of decided to just develop our own virtual machine and run with fully Turing complete smart contracts because of the all of the additional possibilities that they open and the ability to create sophisticated applications like we have the DEX and like the stablecoin that's running on Beam. So that's why we decided to go with Turing complete.
So do you have the concept of gas then to pay for the smart contracts if they're Turing complete?
So you do pay for the transactions just like you would with regular value transferring transactions. You pay in Beam, so we don't have like a separate gas concept. But obviously there is a limitation.
There is like a fee per computation as you go through
Yes.
the smart contract. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
I think the most interesting aspect is that the transaction is formed because of the Mimble-Wimble, that everything has to be balanced out eventually, your inputs and outputs, including the smart contracts. So once the transaction goes through, it can only go through if it's actually working, right? So there is no situation like on Ethereum that you send a transaction, it fails, and you still pay the gas. That's not happening.
Oh, okay. So it keeps. But what if you run out of funds to pay the gas fee?
In this case, the transaction will not be even accepted by the node.
Oh, I see. You do the evaluation up front. Got it. I see. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for that explanation. Yeah.
So I think it's really important. I think it's really great that Beam made Alex made clarification what is private smart contracts, because there are other projects let's say Darrow. Definitely, we all know of Darrow, who claims private smart contracts. But the thing is that the contracts themselves are still transparent, and of course, the privacy max is, that's bad. There are trade-offs, when you want to have really true privacy smart contracts. That means you can't even see the kind of what's happening within the contract. That introduces a lot of crazy things. We've also done research in this, and especially when you're starting to deal with sort of privacy pools, not in the Vitalik way, but you're trying to do swaps in a privacy preserving AMM manner. Right now, there's only Penumbra that's actually really doing it, which is also a Cosmos chain, but they do this in really advanced ZK cryptography, and the performance is not that great yet. So there are trade-offs, and whether you want to know whether you're going to get whether you're getting rugged in the pool, whether it's being drained, all of that is hidden. So there is the trade-off, right? But before we go too far off course, which is I guess our normal modus operandi here, what was the question that you had for Joel? Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes.
No, go on, Yen. Go on, Yen.
No, please. Please.
Well, actually, I just wanted to say, because you basically went in on crypto from 2015. Did you make the full transition to crypto in 2015, or was there a particular? I guess I have a lot of questions, but was it a phased transition, or was it all at once? What was the kind of tipping point? What year did you go all in on crypto? Have you encountered? I guess my next the question would be: have you had any issues since going all crypto? So those are my kind of.
Yeah. So I first heard about crypto somewhere in 2012, I believe, and the first Bitcoin I received was in the middle of 2013. And since from about the middle of 2013 to the end of 2015, I used it sporadically for peer-to-peer payments in my community with friends. I did some work for it. I did some copywriting for the Bitcoin Bigfoot flyers, which were kind of a big deal at the time, where CoinDesk wrote an article about them. But now they would never write something about a simple flyer today. And so I was basically what I would say like a third or a quarter living on crypto up until 2015. And then at that point, I decided to do a career change and just decided to start working all in the crypto industry. And as such, at the end of 2015, I decided to not accept any fiat currency anymore. So if there was jobs that only paid in fiat, I wouldn't take them. And so I guess you could call that a relatively full transition. And then towards the middle of 2016, I closed my bank account, or more importantly, some scammer had some exploit, and so the account had to be closed. And when they said we need, like, let's close this account and open a new one, I just said, let me think about opening a new one, and I just like never went back to do it. And so I guess you could call relatively complete by mid 2016. In the early days, there was a certain amount of like selling peer-to-peer to cash for for stuff that I couldn't use crypto on, or that I couldn't use things I could buy with crypto on. And I haven't done that in a while, like a couple years. So now it's a lot easier these days to just not have any cash or anything like that. It's also a lot easier to do things not in a completely peer-to-peer way, whereas before you kind of have to say, hey, landlord, can you please take this? And then now there's like a bill pay service that just like a one click, you sign up, you just pay non-custodially, everything that works. So yeah, we definitely come a long way since those early days.
So if we
And
checked
just
your
for those-
wallet right now, there'd be no cash.
Sorry, come again?
If we checked your wallet right now, there'd be no cash in it.
Not significant amounts now, just like $20 here from like someone. Someone says, hey, can I pay you back for this? And I don't have crypto, so I'm like, sure, I'll just take this.
Right, fair
just
enough.
in case.
Yes.
Just in case there's like an emergency situation, but definitely not enough to like handle a night out, if that's
Right.
So
right.
probably
Yeah.
under
Yeah,
100
fair enough.
USD probably.
And I know you've tweeted a lot about various different services that basically allow you to live fiat free. Do you have any sort of particular website or any resource you could point to where all of these potential services are kind of collated? Do you have a list essentially that you could go, here, look at this for our audience?
Sort of. I was looking at creating a list for my own website, and then kind of got distracted by things. It's the easiest thing is if you're traveling, Travala.com is good, right? That basically flights, rooms, everything, and they take a lot of coins. I think they take Firo as well. And then for bill pay, if you're in Australia, there's something called Living Room of Satoshi. If you're in Canada, I can't remember what the name. I think Bitcoin Well is the name of the one in Canada. But for the most part, they're the two big ones are Swap In, like swapping without the G on the end, and that works for most of the world, like a lot of Europe, all that kind of stuff. And I know I forget Jonathan Silverblood from Finland. He lives entirely off of Bitcoin Cash, and one of the things that helps him a lot is he pays all his bills with Swap-In. So Swap-In is great, and then Spritz, Spritz is in like the Aperol Spritz, the drink, is the U.S.-based one that works. The first great one that really works in the U.S., and they're expanding to other countries. So that's for bill pay. So you got travel, you got bill pay, and then Bitrefill for everything else. And the thing is, Bitrefill is especially good because it might have one or two services that require KYC, but everything else does not require KYC and does not even require an account. So you can completely anonymously just throw in a burner email so they send to send the gift card receipt or whatever, and buy gift cards or mobile top-ups or whatever to any number of things imaginable. So just from that, off the top of my head, it's pretty easy to like live in almost entirely off of crypto. Now, of course, depending on your favorite crypto, you might have to like swap for a couple of these things. Like for example, Bitcoin Cash is not supported by Bitrefill and things like that. And I know while Living Room with Satoshi removed Dash a few years ago, There is a hack for that through some bit refill payment thing for Australia, for example. But that's just kind of the grand overview.
Sure.
That's
So
awesome.
let me steer it back to the topic,
Yes.
which is again alternatives to centralized exchanges. So let me ask this question of everyone, right? Like, can which crypto do you think any crypto can survive completely without a centralized exchange? And I guess, like, I also would like to hear also from Beam, like, their experience after losing a Binance listing, which was really out of nowhere. How the currency has adapted. And a lot of these services that Joe talks about, like Bitrefill, Travala, and all of these, they all have centralized exchange backends. So I'm really curious. Like, well, today, if privacy assets were completely delisted from all the centralized exchanges, is that something that we can deal with right now? And if we can't, what is that future going to look like, right? Are we going to expect, like, the Travalas and all these Bitrefills to be having, some sort of API connections to these decentralized exchanges? Is that even possible? So maybe let me, I know Dr. Cup has a very interesting take on, like, well, let's welcome CBDC so we can include them in our atomic swap decks. So so yeah, go ahead, Dr. Cup. Maybe you can help answer the question of, can we
Okay.
survive completely removed centralized exchanges? And okay, let's say if not right now, what does the future look like with an era without centralized exchanges?
Okay, so the answer I'm going to give you is yes. That's the very short answer. The second thing I want to say is I'm so glad I've got the Beam CTO on the on the line with us. I know that you got, it's a shame you got delisted from Binance, but we are currently developing sort of full-on Mimblewimble atomic swap support for Litecoin. We're hoping to have that all ready by July of this year. We already can basically, interconvert between Mimblewimble and their public balance on our decks. But I think once we get atomic swap support for Mimblewimble, I don't see why we can't integrate Beam onto basic swap decks. Essentially, how it works is we use adaptive signatures, which is an implementation of scriptless scripts. And if you kind of go through basic swap decks, there's some really nice little diagrams that show you the order flows and exactly how the swap processes work for this step by step. It uses an intermediary data layer called the SMSG network. But anyway, basically, Olive Branch, Open Arms, Beam, come join us, list with us, once we get Mimblewimble sorted out for atomic swaps, we'll list you basically, or we'll be more than happy to work with you guys. That's my take. Can we survive without CEXs? Well, I mean, Monero's certainly doing a pretty good job. It got delisted from Binance. And yeah, if you look at the fiat value, it went from 150 to 100, then bounced to 125 and stabilized. You've cut off a liquidity pathway, sure. But I think one of the things that struck me out when talking to some of the Monero community members was that if you have sufficient distribution of your coin into a community of not just speculative holders, but users who actually understand the case for that, the use case for it, then they will. Basically, the quote I got is, in the Monero community, there is no one who is going to sell below this price. It is just not going to happen. So we have set the price collectively, and that is the price you are going to get. And I think that shows a community that have basically made a collective decision to say, we will not sell this for less than this particular fiat value, and we are giving it the value that we feel it deserves. And I think that's a very good, philosophy for a lot of coin communities to take on board, is you don't need CEXs to necessarily lead your price. CEXs do provide liquidity, they do provide inflows and outflows, and they provide they make it easier to get in and out of fiat. But if we're moving away from fiat, which is what we're supposed to be doing, then CEXs are meant to become irrelevant. Not CEX, but CEXs are meant to become irrelevant over time. And my take here is, I've said to you guys before, CBDCs, bring them. We'll just incorporate them into We'll figure out a way to incorporate them into basic swap decks. I think, I look at these pseudo decentralized digital currencies, which I'll call CBDCs, and go, yeah, they're just another protocol which can be swapped with, and we'll find a way to make that as anonymous and private as possible, because this is a technological arms race, and it's a social arms race, and it's a liquidity arms race. To me, it has a very much a predator-prey evolving relationship, and that's my large take. I think that the real answer to this, if you want evidence-based approach, will come from looking at Monero's price activity and Monero's liquidity over time. And the other thing is, I won't lie, Binance delisting Monero's been really good for us at basic swap decks, because it has driven a number of, pretty influential and respectable Monero community members to us, who've now started playing with our decks and realizing actually there is something to the solution we're offering. And now we are getting more and more community developer support from the Monero community, and we're getting rapidly expanded development to the point that I can barely keep up with our forums on basic swap decks now on a day-to-day basis. I physically cannot. The amount of development commits and stuff that's getting pushed out, and the pace. So that has been a big positive.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I am an optimist in this sense. Will we get to the promised land? Well, I think we are in a transitional phase. I really believe we're in a transitional phase right now, but I think the more you push against an emergent system, the more it pushes back by adapting and evolving. And I think we've got an emergent system, which I think Joel's rightly pointing out. We're now at a point where he's just listed 3 services that allow you to pay all your bills and buy all your goods and services in crypto. And yes, ultimately they are using some sort of payment processor and fiat gateway, but that is a huge step from where we were in 2015, 2012, 2009, a massive step. And actually going back to the inception of eCash, which goes back into the early 90s, and even looking at the history before that, we have made huge strides over the last 30 years. So there is reasons to be optimistic on longer timeframes, but it's easy to get sucked in to the grime of a day-to-day basis.
Sure. And one of the things I guess I also would like to kind of bring up is one of the pain points with, especially when we're dealing with cross-chain DEXs, which, let's say Tor chain, basic swap DEX, or even Firo DEX, or Komodo wallet, all of these, the cross-chain DEXs. I'm not sure what Beam, I know Beam also has an atomic swap DEX, but I'm not sure if it's just for their own Beam assets, or I know you have a centralized Ethereum bridge, but I wasn't sure, was there any cross-chain stuff? Maybe Alex, could you elaborate a bit on your DEX solution?
Yeah, so we actually have all of them. So we have the atomic swaps, which are useful if you want to exchange Beam for Bitcoin or Litecoin. We support several Bitcoin compatible chains and also a couple of Ethereum tokens. If I want to send you a Bitcoin and get Beam in return as an atomic swap, so we have a separate mechanism for that. We also have a kind of OTC exchange for tokens on top of Beam. So if you create your own Beam asset, we call them confidential assets, you can exchange them as well. And we also have bridges. Bridges that we have are very simple. They're centralized. They're not something to write home about, but in terms of atomic swaps, they're completely decentralized. They use very sophisticated, kind of very, very secure, and that's very difficult to use mechanism. We wait for a long time for confirmation, so it's very robust, but a swap takes time to complete.
Cool. Thanks a lot for that. And for these, I think also one of the big issues that we're seeing, especially with cross-chain DEXs, is that the requirement to to maintain the full nodes of every single chain that you support, right? I mean, I've heard of some like cross-chain swaps that they're doing some sort of like there's a light kind of node, right? But as far as I know, like basic swap uses like a full node. So like if you want to swap between Firo or like Particl or something, you have to maintain both chains. And I'm just wondering, like, maybe first of all, Alex, could you like tell me, like, do you have to retain like the full Bitcoin node and also like the Beam blockchain as well, or could you use some sort of light implementation or offload it somewhere? And then we'll have Dr. Cup also explain basic swap DEX as well. Yeah.
No, you still have to have some kind of interaction with the Bitcoin node, like either your own or if you have some remote service that supports that. The process is integrated inside the wallet, so you don't need to run a separate Bitcoin wallet. Like the entire process end to end can be done from Beam Wallet. But obviously, both in Bitcoin and Ethereum case, you do have to have some kind of access to the node. We don't replace that. For Beam itself, it's obviously not a problem because it's a small blockchain and very compact. But when you want to work with Ethereum, for example, it's almost like it's possible, but it's very difficult to run your own node. You're probably using Firo and some centralized service for that.
How big is Beam blockchain at the moment?
Well, I don't have exact number in front of me, but it can be easily synchronized in like 45 minutes, and then you can run it on an average machine without any major requirements. It's a couple of gigabytes, I don't know, but 4 or 5.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Cup, and go ahead, speak about basic swap DEX and how you guys handle like the multiple nodes and stuff like that, or future plans for that.
Sure. So with the current iteration of basic swap, it's a peer-to-peer node-based. It's a peer-to-peer DEX. So you are essentially operating two technologies. The first thing is when you download and install basic swap DEX, you can either install it on a local machine or you can set it up on a remote server that you have access to. Whatever option you choose, you just need to be prepared to understand that if you're going to leave it, once you set it up, you want to basically be in a position to leave it running 24/7. And the reason for this is simple. We basically have a fully distributed, decentralized order book, and that's transmitting messages across nodes in a peer-to-peer fashion. If your machine is offline, it simply cannot transmit messages to other nodes, and it can't receive messages from other nodes. So any orders that you have from your node, they won't transmit, or any messages relating to trades from your node won't be received if your machine is offline. So this is why we say you can either have it on a local machine running 24/7 or on a remote sort of server running 24/7. You have to download and sync the chains that you wish to trade with in this version. We are working towards light client support, but at the moment we're just kind of refining what we already have. So essentially when I say you have to download and sync the respective chains, if you wish to trade Dash, Monero, Firo, Pivx, Litecoin, Particl, or any combination of those, then you've got to download and sync each respective chain. For various reasons, I personally don't recommend downloading and syncing the Bitcoin chain because it's big, it's bloaty, and the transaction fees are really high because you're doing straight swaps. It's a cross-chain DEX. So you're doing straight atomic swaps against pairings on the orders. So essentially you are going to be running these nodes. So you probably realistically want to have a dedicated device if you're going to be running basic swap DEX. The upside to this is you're basically in full control of the setup. You have full custodianship. It's not that you're giving your custody away to some trusted third party. There is no KYC in our implementation, and it is fully decentralized. And our usage of atomic swaps, it's not the traditional hash locked, time locked atomic swap type. It is using something called adapter signatures. So essentially when you do atomic swaps on our DEX, if you use the adapter signature type, then it doesn't leave timestamps on the respective chains. Therefore, our swaps are much more immune to third-party observer analysis. So those are kind of the key technical aspects. There are other aspects to our DEX which make it a lot more private as well. All the traffic on our intermediary data layer, the SMSG network, that's all end-to-end encrypted. So again, there are various layers of privacy to our solution, but there are certain trade-offs which I've just described.
Cool. Also like quickly kind of share like our experience because we have something called Firo DEX, which is a white label from Komodo Wallet, which used to be Atomic DEX. I don't think they are as privacy preserving as a basic swap DEX when it comes to atomic swaps. But I think one of the big advantages there is that I think they've been developing for a lot longer, and they also have all this light node support. So people, when you download the Firo DEX or Atomic Wallet, you don't really have to sync the entire chain. I'm not the atomic swap expert, so I don't really know what are the trade-offs that we are experiencing there. But I think one of the big pain points was also, like as you mentioned, when you want to swap with a chain that is really expensive, like Bitcoin or worse, Ethereum, right? We wanted to have support for stable coins with Firo on this DEX, but the swaps were like the cost of doing that smart contract interaction was really, really high. And in the end, we were like, we have to use other chains as well, like, even BSC or Arbitrum or something else like that, which is kind of less than ideal. So, I think I really like atomic swaps, and I do think it solves a lot of the issues. But when it comes to dealing with layer ones, which have really high gas fees, the user experience there is still kind of like meh. And I don't know really how we can get around it. But I would also like to hear, I guess, from Joel, he has, we actually have Maya Protocol listening in. So Maya Protocol is a fork of Torchain, as if I understand correctly. And I think Joel, being the crypto person, uses them very regularly. And I do believe that I also use Torchain and Maya a little bit, not as extensive as Joel, but I'd be happy to hear your experience. Do you have any pain points? What are the great stuff? What is the bad stuff? And what are the limitations when you're using something like Maya or Torchain? And obviously, Yenachar, please chime in when you if you have anything to say. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Dr.
so
Joel.
I'm a huge fan of the AMM DEX type things like Thorchain, like the Maya protocol. And part of that is just because of the kind of no fuss experience of it. You don't have to necessarily match buyers and sellers. You don't necessarily have to figure out pricing, etc. It's like the one-click sort of a swap kind of service, just like we have a lot of centralized exchanges, as well as the ability to integrate into a lot of these services back end. And so it's definitely something that's a lot more mainstream applicable, where there's a lot of people. One of the funniest things I saw was Trust Wallet integrated Thorchain, and I think they're one of the most commonly used Thorchain swap interfaces is in the background of Trust Wallet, which is owned by Binance. And it was funny that CZ in some tweet thread didn't even know that what Thorchain was, and he didn't even know his own wallet was using it in the back end. And there's so many different cases of that sort of thing. So I mean, I definitely think the simple elegance of just whether it's connect a wallet or send a transaction or whatever, and it just goes in and goes out in the asset of your choosing is kind of, is really nice. And it's something that's great for mass adoption. Of course, the whole atomic approach allows for a lot more, granularity. Is probably significantly lower on fees typically, and other things like that. So there's definitely room for both. But I think that basically, if you're in the cross-chain AMM world, it's probably going to be, it's almost like a relisting because there's a lot of exchange infrastructure that is built around these, like the Thor chain, the greater Thor chain and its Thor children. And also, one thing, Zcash just announced a grant to integrate into the Maya protocol. And so, obviously, Zcash is also under threat of delisting by Binance before implementing the exchange address setup. And it does help to just be in that world now, because now basically anyone using any coin that's supported by those DEXs can just get in and out, like one click button, get into Zcash, get into Dash, something like that. And that's why I'm also very interested in seeing Sarai DEX come out and support Monero, because I think that the big problem is whenever you have a lot of friction of access, then you have less usage, or you have people cutting corners. If something's too hard to use, they're not going to use it, or they're going to make trade-offs with using it. And one of the easiest things in the world, of course, is, I guess, signing up for Binance and buying some Monero. But then with a delisting, now if you don't have access to Kraken or something in your country, a lot of people won't make that extra step. And obviously the hardcores will. The hardcores will figure out how to get some, but then everyone else just won't make that extra step. But if you could just say, all right, good on, let's just say Thor Wallet, which supports Thor Chain, the Maya protocol, some other stuff. Imagine that they implement Sarai DEX and whatever. You just say, oh, go on there, buy some, I don't know, it doesn't matter which coin, and then one click and you're into Monero. And it's like, wow, that was easy. So I definitely think there's a huge advantage in every single privacy focused asset should try to get into some sort of an AMM DEX if they can at all afford like liquidity to do that.
Yeah, I actually agree that the experience of an AMM DEX, at least from a user perspective, is really superior to even a centralized exchange, because you don't have to do KYC. It's direct wallet to wallet. But obviously, with these type of AMM DEXs, they are also risks, right? Because obviously funds are locked in AMM pools. Torchain, I think, experienced at one point like 4 vulnerabilities in 1 month. Of course, they've gotten through that, and they've reinforced the thing, and I haven't heard of any sort of big issues yet, but it kind of highlights it's a trade-off, right? Obviously, if you've never heard of a hack on a atomic swap type of thing, because the pool isn't really locked somewhere sitting there to be hacked. But I also one of the things that I also found quite nice with AMMs is that you could basically provide liquidity without having to leave things online. But it also comes at the cost of capital inefficiency, because I don't know whether MayaSwap or Torchain they support anything else besides the V2 curves. Do they actually support V3 type of Uniswap type of liquidity positions? I'm sure that will be probably possible. But one of the things is that to get a significant amount of liquidity into an AMM, you require quite a lot of money. You need at least, I would say, 100,000 or more to get a pool to have a decent amount of liquidity, right? And unless you're gonna have be using V3 type of solutions. And one of the things I really like about Atomic DEX or Komodo Wallet was that you could provide that same liquidity on various pairs. That means let's say I only have 1,000 Firo, but I want to make them available for swap for Bitcoin, for Particl, for a bunch of different things by using that same liquidity. But then, the moment an order is taken, the rest of the orders are cancelled. So that means your liquidity is kind of working more efficiently. But I've been told, especially from one of the basic swap contributors, OFRN, offering XMR, that says that, that may be a DDoS. That might be a DOS vector where, I'm just keep on spamming and taking down your orders. Dr. Cup, do you have anything to say about that approach?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of things. First, I'm really glad that Joel basically said what he said about AMMs, because I always sort of wondered, I get it, actually, it makes sense from an end user point of view. It is important just to have a smooth one-click convenience. One of the things I always say is that true value is found in providing convenience, and the root of convenience is value, because convenience, whatever saves time, creates value. So I think that's the first thing I want to say. A few caveats I want to say about basic swap DEX before I get to what you just mentioned was that basic swap DEX does allow partial order fulfillment as well as full order fulfillment. So if you put an order for 500, part for 1 XMR, then you can still partially fill that. You could give half an XMR and get 250 part. Because of the way the order book's set up, there is potential for the GUI to essentially, for the user interface or for some sort of end user app to be developed, which just does a sort of one-click, essentially fulfillment of orders, and it will just try and get what it can out of the available book. So I think there is room for basic swap DEX to evolve into a much more user-friendly direction, not just on a kind of liquidity provider front, but also on an end user front. The denial of service attack you're talking about, yeah, it is a current potential vulnerability with basic swap DEX. I'm not going to dance around this. So what it basically is it is completely free to post orders on our DEX. There is no cost associated to that. The orders are placed via the SMSG network. Now, you can't spam the order book with millions of orders because the SMSG network basically uses proof of work to kind of essentially verify the messages being sent across. So if you try and send across too many messages at once, it just increases, basically increases the size of the challenge you need to get through. So there is some spam resistance built into our network. But the fact is you can still put these orders for free on the network, and when you initiate an atomic swap, it goes through several stages. Now, the person offering the swap, now this is all dependent, by the way, so there's two ways of mitigating this, and I'll get to this. But in the current iteration of basic swap DEX, you can basically post an order, and if someone offers to take it, as they initiate the atomic swap process, they will incur a transaction fee on their side for initiating that process, and then the person offering it can cancel. Now, the coins will be returned to the sender or to the person who took up the offer, but they will have still spent a small amount of, they will still burn a small amount of on the transaction fee. So it is possible at the moment to spam basic swap DEX if you're a bad actor with lots of essentially fake orders which you never intend to fulfill, and you would then be in a position, you'd still have to manually cancel them, but you could literally cancel every single one of them, and you're basically trolling whoever's trying to buy from you. Now, there are ways to mitigate against that. The easiest way is just to remove basically to remove the front-end functionality for that. So the way the GUI was designed, or the way the front end was designed, was to enable maximum control for both, offerers or, for those who are offering and those who are taking. So for sellers and buyers, it was designed to maximize the choice of terms on which swaps could occur. So the easiest thing would be just to remove the ability for basically you can basically code this into the GUI by removing the options that allow you to pull out of a swap when it initiates. So that can be done either on the front end, but it could also be built on a protocol level. I know that they're planning to, I know that there's plans to essentially move towards removing that from a front end feature. I know that the guys who are sort of working on basic swap DEX right now, they've identified this issue and a number of others, and that will get resolved. But yeah, at the current iteration, yes, that's a thing. But what I will say is, the other thing I wanted to get to was, I think AMMs are great, but it's building. You have a different set of challenges when you're trying to build a liquidity system with privacy in mind from the ground up. And I'm going to say credit to Soridex. I think they're doing brilliant work. And actually, I really want to see them succeed, because if they do, they will win a huge amount of liquidity.
There's no privacy on Serai, by the way. Yeah,
Sorry,
there's zero
is there? So
privacy on Serai. Actually, yes.
okay, so hang on. Okay, then maybe my mistake, but I think my take is that I think if you're trying to build a privacy into your DEX from the ground up, you have a different set of considerations that aren't. I think it's difficult compared to doing it. It's a different set of considerations to run through for an AMM. But what I'm basically saying is you can still get to the same point of end user accessibility and functionality. It will take longer. And there are slightly different sets of risks, but they are I think they're much easier to mitigate on both a front end and a protocol level. So that's what I've got to basically say, but fair enough.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is an issue with especially these AMM type of DEXs, especially when I went through the process with Thorchain and Maya. Obviously, there is a limit to how many chains they can actually support. Well, if I understand correctly, with basic swap DEX or atomic swap DEX, like you only need to maintain the validators from the end user, for the chains that you want to sync, that you want to swap with, or that you want to provide liquidity for, right? So it's not like I have to maintain all the different pairs that basic swap offers. I don't have all the nodes. I only need to have the nodes that I want to use myself, which is great. While with Maya Swap or with Thorchain, the validators that run the network have to maintain every single one themselves. That means like if there's 100, they have to maintain 100, right? And that means that there is a competition to stay listed and to remain on those MM, like as to be a listed asset, right? So obviously, like, yeah, Zcash has the money to throw at it, right? Or other big chains have money to throw at these integrations as well, but they also have to continue to maintain, because there is a governance process within there. You probably have to hold a certain number of Rune or a certain number of Maya to be continued to be listed on their thing. So that is not really an issue with something like atomic chain swap DEX type of thing. So yeah, that's I guess another trade-off. So I guess we're approaching the last 7 minutes. I guess Yenachar, you've been like really quiet. I mean, do you want to share anything on your end that Pivx is working on, and then we open up the floor to some questions. We got one question from the public already.
Well, just quickly, I do have something to add to this. I think, it's a great discussion, by the way, comparing, AMM based to atomic swaps. I think an important perspective on this also is that decentralization, like privacy, it isn't like an on and off thing. It's a spectrum, right? So you can get more and more decentralized. Ultimately, you can never just have everything spread out over all the atoms in the universe. You have to have pockets of centralization, and there's a role for pockets of centralization in making all this work. We're putting together this picture of many different complicated pieces plugging together, and there's room in that for like some of these like minimally like minimally holding services, like I'm thinking of Flip.me or GoDex or ChangeNow. They you do trust them, right? So you need like proper optimal procedures to deal with them, break things up into pieces. They could rug pull. So you do have to worry about that, but they can do things more efficiently. Like you were mentioning, Reuben, interacting with Ethereum, they might be able to like bundle transactions and things like that. So I think, even though it's not ideal, it would be best to seek maximal decentralization. There is a role for those services in this overall process too, to fill in the gaps that we were discussing. And I guess that would be the my point to add. And certainly, Pivx is working hard on that angle, being sure we're listed on many different exchanges of that nature, and we're trying to maximize liquidity for Pivx.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a
right.
good point about so many different services being, I guess, useful in the ecosystem. And definitely with the AMM DEX approach, it's more like a full replacement for the centralized exchange world, sort of. It's like a decentralize it, but it's still it's more like a decentralized institution, as it were. And then it's like a permissionless centralized exchange that's, by the way, decentralized, right? Whereas the atomic DEX type thing is much more, I would say, grassroots, P2P, and all that kind of stuff. And so definitely I think that there's going to be some sorts of trade-offs in the future. And pretty much what we're talking, when we talk about this Binance listing this coin, Kraken's delisting this coin, all that kind of conversation, I personally think maybe in the future it'll be the same sort of conversation around the big AMM DEXs, whereas they'll sort of take the place of the larger exchanges today, and there will be those kinds of things about liquidity is getting too low on Thorchain. We need to make sure that we're not dropped by the nodes. The nodes don't vote to drop us, and let's make sure. And then if that happens, it'll be a big blow to the project or whatever. And then there will always be some sort of a tier kind of system. But the good thing about decentralization and just the diversity of the ecosystem is you always have a space to exist in. There's always a spot where the biggest delisting factor, I think, is not privacy, is a lack of consumer demand. If there's a ton of money to be made from trading, people will find a way to trade it. And I think that in the future, that's something that's, we're going to have to worry about a lot more. But yeah, ultimately, I do think that we're going to be okay. I think we're doing pretty well.
Cool. So, okay, I'm going to... Dr. Cobb has a question. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just something I wanted to add from that. I think we are moving very rapidly away from CEXs a lot faster than people realize. A caveat I want to add is I think we're going to beat centralized exchanges the day when we are able to lead the price faster than any. So if you look at the centralized architecture, at the moment, it permits high frequency trading, which allows high frequency traders to essentially lead the price for a given asset. That's the only real use for a centralized exchange when you compare it against a decentralized solution. So atomic swap DEXs at the moment, they're too slow. AMMs, they will utilize an average from a pool. Whereas a centralized exchange, the singular advantage it has over those systems is because a centralized architecture permits high frequency trading, you can always have a high frequency trader leading the price, which then leads the arbitrage opportunities, which then leads the liquidity flow. As soon as you solve that problem of as soon as you solve the problem of porting high frequency trading and the fastest high frequency trading onto decentralized solutions, then centralized exchanges will become completely irrelevant. And we will move to a future where there will be no centralized exchanges at all, because they simply will not be profitable.
Cool. Okay, so we are reaching the end of the thing, but then we have some questions from Sheltz, who is with the Bitcoin is the revolution. I think he's a bit antagonistic, but he's like, why are you guys complaining about Bitcoin fees? It's so cheap now. Are you guys that poor? I mean, that was basically what his thing is. Sure, maybe cheap now. I don't think I'm even going to bother to answer that unless you guys want to, address
I'll
that.
address it super quickly. It's fine if you're doing the occasional trade. It's about cumulative trading and high frequency trading. At the end of the day, every atomic swap costs a fee, and it's not a singular fee. You're getting several transaction fees. It's a multiple of, given the number of steps in the process. So I don't have a problem. Use whatever I gave you my personal opinion, not speaking on behalf of our project. Basic Swap DEX fully supports Bitcoin. there are members of our team who love Bitcoin, who are Bitcoin maxis. Some of our OGs, developers of Bitcoin maxis, absolutely hate me for saying what I've said. But that's your call. I'm not here to like. I'm sorry, by the way, if I sounded like I was raining down on, punching down on a coin. But at the end of the day, it is about cumulative high frequency trading. That is the future we need to strive towards. And that's a serious consideration that needs to occur. Now, in my mind, the solutions to this, they're not going to require level ones. So actually, you're kind of right. For now, I'm going to hold my thing about transaction fees. I think that applies to any chain. Any chain, the chains with the highest transaction fees will incur the most costs. But in the future, I think the solutions will arise where the transaction fees on level ones will be completely irrelevant. So this is very much a for now, not for the future.
Yeah, and I would add to Bitcoin is the rest. Oh, go ahead, please.
So let me just hit on the synthetic thing real quick, because Thorchain and Maya do have something called synthetics, which is you mint a representation of let's just say the Bitcoin in the pool on the actual Thorchain or Maya network. And then you can trade that back and forth for very low fees very quickly. So it's basically the DEX version of swapping, say, Bitcoin for Ethereum on a centralized exchange where only on their internal ledger does it change hands. It doesn't move on chain. So it's basically abstracting that it's still on a blockchain, just not on that native blockchain. But so, for example, you could throw 5 Bitcoin into a pool and then mint, say, 5 synthetic Bitcoins and just like buy the dip and trade things, just go back and forth between all kinds of different things, and just have that like professional trader kind of an experience for very low fees for all their transactions. And so it's kind of like, if you could call it layer 2 scaling, it kind of is in the trading sense, where you could say Bitcoin, Thorchain and Maya can be Bitcoin and Ethereum L2s purely for trading on that platform. Although, from my understanding, I don't understand very much about this, but the Maya protocol is kind of coming out with a smart contract chain, the Aztec chain, which would be able to then use these sorts of synthetics on greater purposes than just locked into the actual trading architecture of the exchange itself. But yeah, so basically, yes, there are a lot of solutions coming out and actually active today for the high fee chains being able to be used in a decentralized way efficiently.
That's fascinating. That's a great way forward. It's like you're trading a claim to a Bitcoin that you can cash out later, right?
Yeah. So the one other question from the same guy was, have you guys heard about Bisq network? Of course, I have. I've used it several years ago. It was not a very good user experience. It was kind of slow and the slippage was really high. It wasn't a lot of liquidity. It might have changed now. So I'm like, has anyone used Bisq very recently? Like Joel, you're all into this. Have you used it? I mean,
I've not used it recently. I used it, I think, 2018, maybe 2019, somewhere around there. And for I think it was a peer-to-peer cash trade. I don't remember, but yeah, it was clunky, very clunky, in fact. And I'm a big fan of Bisq existing because there's very few decentralized exchanges that have a fiat on ramp. And it's not really, I don't know if I can call it like a fiat on ramp, but a fiat element to the peer-to-peer trading, where you could send like cash in the mail, you can, meet up at a location, you can do like a bank transfer or whatever else, in order to actually buy the crypto with fiat. And that's kind of one of those big things that's super important today in the crypto economy, is how can you give someone your fiat and get crypto from it. But I think that's going to become decreasingly useful as you have more and more crypto adoption as a whole of any kind of coin. And just like in the old days, it used to be once you have Bitcoin, you're into the matrix. You're kind of there. You can do it for anything. And then it became, now it's like a lot of the EVM world sort of thing is in there. But like, if you have any I think if you have any cryptocurrency that is listed on, for example, the major AMM dexes, right? Then it's just a click or two away from getting any other coin that's also listed there. And especially once you get one, like if you have a fiat on ramp that lets you buy, let's just say, $1,000 worth of Litecoin with your credit card without doing full KYC, because there's a few of those that do that. Then okay, well, you kind of did, or go to an ATM, buy something cheap, then you can go to like Basic Swap and then just load up on Firo or whatever else. It doesn't matter how, if it's completely shunned from the entirety of the centralized exchange architecture, there's nowhere that will let you buy it with fiat. It does not matter. And increasingly, I think that once we get into this like super liquid, interconnected, crypto native world, I really think that these centralized exchange delistings, or the fiat access, is not going to matter. And that's when I was kind of talking about where the AMM dexes are sort of going to take the place of like the larger centralized exchanges as like the top tier, but then there's always going to be bottom tier, and it's going to be a lot easier to get in and interact and etc. than ever before. So I really like BISC as a concept. I think that I also unfortunately know multiple friends who have done prison time for peer-to-peer trading of crypto, what they thought was completely legal and legit, but they got entrapped in some things. So there's a lot of risk that kind of carries. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it just means that this sort of approach it's great to have as a backup right now. And it just kind of like to make sure that anyone can be in the game if they want to be so far. And one of these days, hopefully we evolve past the need for kind of these like clunkier or riskier solutions.
Yeah,
definitely.
I just also want to say on the back of that, CBDCs are going to change. I think this is going to be another area where they will actually drive adoption of decentralized exchanges, because you no longer have to go through traditional banks or payment processors or sending cash in the mail. I think it'll be very interesting to solve the privacy problem with CBDCs. I think it's solvable, but I think again that needs to be factored in. So yeah.
Cool. All right. We are around 8-10 minutes across all across the line, and obviously I'm a bit more pessimistic. I always feel like CBDCs are going to just go into like the permission route and end up to be kind of the same. But I like Dr. Cup's enthusiasm, and me being a legally trained person tend to be a bit of a downer. But
wait, just real quickly, what about synthetic CBDCs? You could like have a pool of traditional CBDCs, probably have them running through a regulatory compliant framework, but then trade the synthetics and then exit in and out. Is that possible?
I mean,
I haven't thought about it. But still, like, how do I convert that legally? Yeah.
The problem is, I think CBDCs are very much of an unknown. I think we all know kind of what they encapsulate conceptually, but what form will they take? Will they literally be just another crypto that's interoperable with other cryptos, but just as issued and controlled by a central bank? I mean, under that situation, yeah, absolutely, integrate them into DEXs, and they just become, it's just like a Tether or USDC or something like that. But it could be a very different architecture. It could be something that's wholly incompatible with the permissionless kind of crypto world, and maybe it'll just be completely just like the fiat world today, just absolutely incompatible. So we don't really know yet in a lot of cases.
Yeah, like try integrating the China CBDC, right? I don't think that works yet. But as you said, we have yet to see that happen, and we can only be hopeful, and hopefully they value the value of the US dollar remaining the dominant currency to make it more permissionless. And I guess one of the sad things is that one of the groups that were very pro Bitcoin in like development and all of that, which was like the MIT Bitcoin group or something like that. They were working on a lot of Bitcoin improvement stuff, and recently they've just been totally focused on developing a CBDC, which is kind of sad. Just feels like they abandoned Bitcoin in favor of the CBDC. But yeah, let's end now. But any closing thoughts? Let's start. Oh gosh, where did Beam CTO drop off a long time ago? I feel like I haven't seen his name. I saw they was having connectivity issues, but it's a bit sad that
They
he
got
isn't
him.
here at the end.
They got him.
Yeah, they got him.
Pour one out for the homie.
Yeah, so maybe Joe, any closing thoughts, and then Dr. Cobb, and then Yenachar, and I will just shut up.
Yeah, I'll just leave my closing thought and then drop off. There's some clip, I have to go post it here somewhere, but of Alux, the founder of the Maya protocol, coming on my show, and he get this like 5 more years speech where he just said, like, we're on the precipice of separating money from state, which has never been done before, and we're probably like 5 more years. We just have to get through it. We just have to survive that long. He thinks it's 5 years. I think more like 10. And then we're through to the other side where we have permissionless money. He says we gotta stop fucking around, stop scamming each other, and put our heads together and actually just solve this. And we'll be there in just a few years.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, Dr. Cup. Yep.
Eternal optimism. We can solve any problem that is presented to us. Human species. Live on.
All right. Live on. Okay, yeah, Yenachar?
Yeah, I'll just add to the optimism. I think all this like centralized exchange delisting and all this pressure by the government is just strengthening us. I mean, it's like leading to these kind of conversations and this kind of development, and it all just makes what we're doing stronger.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add, but I just would like to thank everyone for coming here. Beam CDO, even though he's not here, just like to thank him vicariously, posthumously?
In absentia. We thank you in absentia, Beam CTO.
Yeah, absentia. That was the one, not posthumously. Thanks, Joel, for coming on. And this whole Twitter space will be available on our YouTube, I guess. We'll post it later, maybe in a couple of days' time. And we obviously, appreciate everyone for coming here and making this possible, asking questions. And yeah, I think we always learn from all of this. So yeah, have a great Sunday, everyone. And signing out. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Great discussion. Thanks to Alex and Joel.